It's Ash from SuperVideos back for another video for The Walking Dead Dead City. In this video, we're going to be talking about Negan's wife, Annie. What happened to Annie? Now, of course, a lot of fans were really wondering what happened to Annie after season 11 of The Walking Dead's main show. And in the recent episode of The Walking Dead spinoff Dead City with Negan and Maggie, we actually have a lot of answers as far as what happened to Annie, why aren't Negan and Annie together, and what happened to their kids. Now, even though there were some answers, there was a lot more questions raised as far as where we go from here. But regardless, we're going to talk about what they revealed, and I'm going to make some predictions as far as what I think they might be doing in future seasons of Dead City when it comes to Negan and Annie's story. So stay tuned, we'll be right back to break this down. Alright, as always, before we dive into it, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. With that, let's jump right into it. So, of course, in the last episode of The Walking Dead Dead City, episode 3, which was called People Are a Resource, Negan and Maggie started talking, and Negan pretty much came clean about what happened to his family. He was reluctant at first, but when he started talking, he kind of spilled the beans as far as what went down. And what he said is, at some point, Negan, his wife Annie, and their child, who actually has a name, Joshua, of course he would have a name, but we just didn't know it, but they were staying at a cabin near the New Babylon, a community we've actually heard the name of a few times in that city so far. And then one day, Annie decides to go and do some trading at New Babylon. And what happens is that she doesn't return that night, which leaves Negan wondering what happened to her, and he goes looking for her and finds her robbed, beaten, and likely assaulted. Now, Negan doesn't really say sexually assaulted, but we can read between the lines a little bit and assume that that happened. And of course, Negan, being who he is, he goes after the people that attacked his wife Annie and basically takes revenge, kills those men that assaulted and robbed Annie. Now, this is where things get interesting because the people that Negan killed were actually the marshals. Killing those marshals is what led to the Babylon marshals coming after Negan, and that's why he became a wanted man. So that's definitely super interesting, and it puts into perspective the story and how things shaped up the way they are now. Now, this is where things get a little interesting and sort of weird because how Negan explains it is that to prevent Annie and Joshua from getting hurt, in case the marshals want to retaliate, Negan sends both Annie and Joshua on a train to Missouri, and he tells them he's going to catch up to them. But he never does. He stays behind, but he basically sends them away so that they don't get hurt. Now, a few things. Why didn't Annie return to find Negan? So that's kind of in the air and sort of a plot hole, if you ask me. But the other part of it is this is in no way an acceptable closure and ending to Negan's story with Annie, right? And if we're to assume that she's not going to return, it's disappointing and underwhelming. But I'm assuming that we are going to see Annie and Joshua in later seasons of The Walking Dead, Dead City, and we might see them reunite, and we'll see where their story shapes up from there. But the important thing to note here is that obviously Negan's decision to leave his family is most certainly gonna have an impact on what he does and where things go for him. And I'm assuming that the fact that his family is not there is gonna push him more towards being that darker Negan that we obviously remember. But the last piece of things that I want to talk about is at this point when we don't have Negan's family with him, I feel like they introduced Ginny, a young survivor, and had her connect with Negan in such a way where they have a daughter father bond to fill the gap. Because obviously Joshua Negan's real son is not here. So that's definitely something interesting. Now, I don't know how far they're going to take it with their story and how long Ginny's going to survive, but I'm assuming that what they're going to end up doing is at some point when Joshua does return, it's either going to be a case where Ginny is not there, which makes things easier, or if she's there, then obviously they might create this sort of conflict within Negan to want to take care of both his biological son, Joshua, and the person that he's grown connected to and started caring about, Ginny. But that's obviously not going to be in season 1 because we know that Negan's family is not going to return in season 1, so it might be season 2, if anything. The other very interesting thing to keep in mind here is that we know Dwight, who has a very interesting history with Negan, also has a son named Finch, who we saw in Fear the Walking Dead. So could there have possibly been a interesting story where Finch and Joshua's stories connect and they cross paths? It could have been, but obviously Fear the Walking Dead writers ruined that possibility by killing Finch. So that is out the window at this point. But it's something that could have been, and it's something that should have been, if you ask me. But the last thing I want to talk about is something interesting that impacts not just Negan. It's bigger than Negan. It's even bigger than Dead City. And that has to do with what Negan said. Negan said that he actually got Joshua and Annie on a train to Missouri. Now, you might not really think that's a big deal, but think about it. That means that there are functional trains at this point in the apocalypse, and they are operational enough to get survivors from one settlement potentially to other settlements. So that brings up a lot of possibilities and kind of intriguing storylines when it comes to the future of the Walking Dead franchise. And also, it's something that connects directly to a big part of the Walking Dead's final season. Final 8 episodes, I should say. We know that trains were a pretty big deal in the Commonwealth story, and they got a lot of focus. They emphasized on trains a lot from the beginning of the Commonwealth story to the end. So the fact that trains are potentially gonna become an even more important thing in the future of the franchise is intriguing and important. But that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video.